Like Thomas said, my name is Madeski. I'm a freelance artist. That basically just means that I'll play your gig if you hire me, which is a really weird thing because you have to you have to understand what your role is in the band. It's really easy to kind of just let your chops get away from you, or kind of get your purposes crossed in playing music. Most of the gigs that are available for you guys, for me, aren't gigs that like really care about how fast your chops are, like how many notes you can play on the double pedal in like, you know, a minute, how many BPMs, or they don't care that, you know, you can play like 4 independent rhythms on each limb. What they do care about is that like you make their music sound good. And that really, that's a different thing, because instead of approaching your instrument like a drummer, you have to approach it like a musician. And like, you know, I just did a bunch of crazy stuff. A lot of the contestants did like a ton of crazy stuff, and it's really impressive. It's really fun, and it's a lot of what drives us to be better musicians. But it's not what's called for. It's not really the purpose of what we do. I mean, you know, you might be able to get into a band that does like epic metal or fusion or whatever, or progressive rock, and, you know, you'll get to show that stuff off, but, you know, if you want to get work as a musician, you have to have these other skills. You have to be able to groove. Does anybody in here like the Beatles? Yeah, woo. Or like the band? Yeah, I mean, like, I love those drummers, LeVon Helm and Ringo Starr, and dude, I mean, that's the proof right there. There's not a ton of drumming that happens, but all the drumming that they do just sounds great and serves the song. And that's basically been what has gotten me, I guess, a career, if you want to call that, in music. A little bit about myself. I've basically only had one real job in my life, besides playing music, and that was when I was like 16. I bagged groceries at Publix, and
yes, me too.
That's right. That's right. And they wanted to make me cut my hair, so I quit.
Yeah.
But anyways, everything else has just been kind of like adapting to situations and you know, getting myself into situations. And a lot of it is luck, being in the right place at the right time. A lot of it is skill too, but being able to adapt your skill to whatever certain situation that you need to play in. Like, I've toured around the country doing this. Like, I've literally not eclipsed that like BPM or that feel like for an entire tour. And it was really gratifying. I've also toured the country doing like getting to play like some odd time kind of crazy stuff, kind of like hyper stuff. I played with this guy named Les Dudek, who he actually plays like one of the solos on Ramblin' Man. He's a solo artist, but he worked with like the Allman Brothers and Boss Skaggs and Steve Miller and stuff like that. Currently, I'm playing with this guy named Victor Wainwright, who's like a rising star in the blues world. And who in here is familiar with the blues? All right, so not everybody, especially like the younger generation. And like I kind of marginally consider myself a part of that generation, although I'm getting older now. We don't really have a lot of exposure to those type of fields because the music that we listen to today on the radio is like quantized, and you know, like there's no roll in rock and roll anymore. It's all very square and metric. But the blues was something completely different and a completely different challenge for me as far as that realm goes. Who in here is familiar with the shuffle beat? Yeah. All right. Woo. Yeah. The Purdy shuffle is a little different. That gets a little more of the drumming rocks off. The regular blues shuffle is this. You'll notice the 4 on the floor. The only music that's current today that uses 4 on the floor is like house music, which is actually kind of making a resurgence. So that's one element of the shuffle that's like really foreign. The other element is this. Right there. That's like right in between, if I use the term triplet, is everybody familiar with that? Right, that's a triplet. Well, you can play the shuffle as if it were triplets. But there's a little bit of like intangible spacing in that note. If you play it the right way or interpret it in a different way. It's like right in between that third triplet partial and the last 16th note. Is everybody familiar with 16th notes?
Yes.
Woo! Yeah, 16th notes. It's a really weird thing, and it really, the shuffle beat has really like enchanted me. Just because it's really foreign, it's really, really simple. The role of a blues drummer, we don't play a lot of fills. If we play a fill, it's most likely, stuff like that. So it really serves the song. And the cool lesson in that is that once you learn the meat and potatoes of what makes a groove or what makes a feel, you can really apply it to everything else that may be a little more complex, or, it could give you a new approach to even if you like play metal all the time. If you boil down the essential part of drumming, it's this. Right? Like I would say 95% of the tracks that you hear on the radio or you listen to are on 4/4 and the snares on 2 and 4. So the shuffle employs that, but it also incorporates just like intangible elements of feel. Anyways, I've talked a lot right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a track that I recorded with Victor Wainwright. It's the title track of his last album. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. It's called Lit Up, and there's not a lot of impressive, flashy drumming on it, but the whole goal is just to make it as swanky and as just like undeniably hip moving as possible. Like your butt, your hips, your pelvis, all that stuff should be affected by the way that this beat sounds. So I'm gonna go ahead and play that for y'all. Cool, guys. So, you know, I didn't change a lot about that drum track, but the main goal was to just really be swanky, to really make it groove, to really tap into the traditional elements of the music and really nail that. You know, it's not the most creative form of music, but I think it's a lot harder to do something when there are rules. It's a lot harder to be fresh when it's like, well, you have to play this beat. So the only thing that can really shine through when you're playing the same beat that a million people have played before is that this is your feel. This is how it comes out of your body. It's how you think about it, or even, you know, on a soul level, that's kind of like how you shuffle. So yeah, the shuffle's a really important thing. Does anybody have any questions about that? Nobody? All right. Yeah.
Is a shuffle mostly a triplet feel?
Yeah, I mean it is, but once you nail the triplet feel, then you can kind of interpret your own deal. Like, and basically all that means is the space between can change into something else. You listen to like a lot of old blues drummers, and their shuffle is kind of like a old baseball mitt that's kind of just been like worn in. And like, if you were to try to write it out, it would be impossible, or it would be like, you would be using like 7-lits and it would be like a quarter note, and it would be like a half note and a dotted quarter note in a 7-lit kind of thing. That doesn't mean it. But yeah, simply yes, and on the next level, no. You know what I mean?
So, I mean, does it involve, I've noticed that some real cool shuffles have a lot of stuff going on with the snare drum. Like the snare is constantly accented.
Yeah, like, you know, I've still yet to like determine what the difference between a Chicago shuffle and like a Texas shuffle and whatever is. Because like you learn, it's kind of like an oral tradition, and people tell you that it's a certain thing, and it's like, well, that's the same thing that I did when you told me to play a Chicago shuffle. But yeah, this is what it is. Like, if you play a double shuffle, you know, that's one of the things that your left hand can do. I like to do a little variation on that and take one of the eighth notes out. And that's kind of like what I was doing on that last song. There's also a thing called a flat tire shuffle, which your right hand gets the shuffle going on, and your left hand plays like on all the third partials, like. That kind of thing. So does that like answer your question? Yeah, cool, dude. So, you know, the blues is really important, and there are a lot of elements that fall into the blues category. Another one is like the New Orleans March. I know it's its own thing, and New Orleans is a completely different bag in itself. Is anybody here from New Orleans?
Kenner.
Right there?
Kenner.
Kenner? Is that by New Orleans?
Right by New Orleans.
Yeah. I'm not from New Orleans, nor have I ever been there, but I really admire the music that comes from there. And one of the things, the next song I'm going to play for you guys is, it's basically a march. I don't know. It kind of reminds me, New Orleans reminds me, does anybody know who John Philip Sousa is? He's the guy who wrote Stars and Stripes. Anybody know that one? Yeah, so the drum beat's like, not even that. It's just really oompa, oompa kind of a thing. Well, I feel like New Orleans takes that whole idea and like soaks it in whiskey and other things, and that the result is like a slowed down march that the players are definitely not militaristic about, and it's really interpretive, and obviously it's the beginning of jazz. So the next song I'm going to play for you guys, I'm going to actually find it on my phone. It's called Subliminal Criminals by Victor Wainwright. So did everybody like visualize like a regiment of drunken people walking down the street or stumbling down the street? Did anybody get that?
Yeah,
That's good. That's the whole point. The whole point of playing a track, if you're not to be totally egotistical about it, is to say something or to create an image. And sometimes that takes a lot of notes. Sometimes that takes unique textures, and sometimes that takes a traditional texture. Does anybody have any questions about anything involved with that?
Yeah. Compare and contrast what you do with the right hand lead on, say, your blues shuffle and say jazz swing.
Well, the thing about the shuffle is a little more. He said compare and contrast the difference between what your right hand does on a blues shuffle and a swing, like a jazz swing or a jazz pattern. And to me, the difference is, because I started playing jazz long before I started playing blues, like in college and stuff. Like the right pattern doesn't have to be so strict. You know, like, I mean, it can literally be anything. The blues can be anything too, but like, you know, have you listened to Tony Williams?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like jazz. It's like, or like Elvin Jones, or so to me, like a jazz ride pattern dances around more. It's definitely more interpretive and interactive. As far as the blues goes, traditionally, I mean, it can be anything. Like I said, it can be anything, but it's more likely to be like, which is a lot like your generic jazz pattern, or sometimes can be, like most of the time it's like that. You know, you can dance around with it, or it can just be chorus. And really, to me, the difference between any of those really affects the way it feels, and it's like a subtle thing, and like on paper it looks very similar, but the effect, especially as compared to what bass line the bass player is playing, how the piano player is comping, what the guitar player may be doing, that's all subject to change. It's really about the total percussive or rhythmic effect of what the band's doing. So to answer your question, I just feel like jazz is a little less heavy-handed. You know, there's more space, and the ride's meant to fill that space. Whereas in the shuffle, it contributes to, maybe I would say, there's a sound balance. You know what I mean? It's and that's basically the main difference to me. Anybody else have any questions about that stuff so far? All right, cool. Well, the next song I'm going to do is not the blues. It's a song by my friend Dan Walters. He's a really fantastic musician who lives in Deland, Florida, which I'm from Daytona Beach, by the way, which is, I don't know, a long ways away from here still. But anyways, I've played in many situations with this guy, Dan Walters, but he's a solo artist. And he's really interesting. I find what he does to be extremely interesting, just because it incorporates traditional songwriting elements with, you know, the song that I'm about to play is called Deland 73. And when he originally gave it to me, it was titled Prague. And he's an older guy, so he was like 13 when like Yes and like Genesis and those type of bands came out. So he put a track like that on his album. And you know, it's in 7/8 for a lot of the part, a lot of the song. And you can listen to this song and easily be like, well, why didn't you play more drums on this song? I always find that when you're playing with a band, especially when you're being hired to play for a band, you don't want to go, how do I put this? Sometimes you do want to go over the top. You want to be that beast element, and that's why they hire you. But other times, I mean, it's, regardless of what style of music it is, you're serving the song. And this song is progressive, but, you know, I just didn't want to play too much. I wanted to explore texture and different variations on the rhythms. So, anyways, please bear with the click track on this track here, because yeah, it's a demo for the record. So you guys are kind of getting a little inside here. I wanted to spare you at the end here. So yeah, I did, groove in 7/8, funky. Kind of the goal was to not make it sound like it was too tricky in a way. Anybody have any questions about that? 7/8 or anything?
Was this when you're like getting ready to go to the studio? How much is planned out? How much just kind of happens?
These tracks, that's a really good question, man. I had these tracks for probably about a month before I recorded them, but I was out on the road. So actually, he was out on the road, and then I went out on the road. So we were supposed to do it with like no preparation, and it just turned out that he went out of town, and I went out of town and came back, and I got to listen to it in some like really tropical, amazing, good places in South Florida, and I got to think about it a lot, and it was really cool. And that's like basically why I chose to do what I do, because I did to the song, because the songs got to set into me, and for me, it's about the right balance of all the elements. I mean, obviously there are cool rhythms that could have been played. I could have played like a bunch of crap over it, but I just don't think the song would have ended up being cool. So, yeah, to answer your question, I did have a decent amount of preparation, but like I got to a point where I was like listening to it and I was like, don't listen to it anymore, because I don't like to go in over-prepared or seeming like, all right, I have written out all these parts. Like I never want any of my tracks to be that way, because it's kind of lame.
Yeah, you can hear it the way it sounds.
Cool. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. How we doing on time, man?
About 5 more minutes, man.
Wow, 5 more minutes. All right, guys. Well, I was going to play a lot more songs for you, but it's not going to work out that way. I'm going to play, the last song I'm going to play for you is another song by my friend Dan Walters, and it's called Come Back, Anna Maria. And it's, we'll go with this being the last song. And it's kind of in a way had like it definitely uses jazz chords. Like there's a chorus in it that like I really did my best to aim for that like Tony Williams ride cymbal hi-hat thing. This. Does anybody know what I'm talking about when I talk about Tony Williams? You here knows who Tony Williams is. I love Tony Williams, man. I love him. That's all that there really is to it. But he just, a lot of those jazz drummers, but in particular him, to me, just got so many amazing sounds out of their instruments. And that's the thing that I think we as drummers don't really consider a lot is like, what sounds are we making? But, we think a lot about how our sticks attacking the instrument or the actual rhythms that we're playing, but I think some of us miss out on like just the musical aspect of like tone and like note length, ride cymbal texture, stuff like that. So anyways, I also use, some of you may see this drum I have over here. It's the burnt orange drum that I'm touching right now. And I've been using it as a floor tom, but it's actually a snare drum. It sounds kind of like a box with rocks in it. And anyways, I kind of mix the two snare sounds up on the song. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Thank you, guys. Anybody have any questions about that? Thank you. Not a question, but clarity of statement. All right. Well, I just wanted to thank Thomas Scott, man. He is working his ass off to give you guys such an amazing event, man. I mean, he got Billy Martin and Thomas Pridgen to come to Pensacola, Florida to play drums for you guys. I mean, that's so badass. I want to thank the sound guys. They did an amazing job. Thanks to everybody who just, checked out the clinic. I really appreciate that, and I just want to wish everybody good luck in their battle. But just remember, man, I mean, drumming's not competitive. Music's not competitive. Just go out there and be you. That's all I can really say, man. Just be you and say something. You know what I mean? Anybody can play, can teach themselves or take lessons or whatever and be a trained monkey and play a million notes. You know what I mean? That's not the important part about what you're doing. You're saying something to the world about who you are, and that's how you should approach it. So also just have fun playing. That's my advice. Anyways, thanks a lot, guys.